There's a moment when someone calls you out. Maybe it's your boss, a partner, a so-called friend. They don't just question what you did, they question who you are, and in that split second, you feel it. That burning need to explain, to clear your name, to make them see the truth. You feel your chest tighten. Your mind races for the perfect sentence, but deep down, there's another feeling, a quieter one, shame. Not because of what they said, but because you're about to defend yourself again. You've done it before. Over and over, typed long messages, replayed conversations, lost sleep trying to explain your heart to people who already decided not to listen. And every time you spoke, you felt smaller. That's not strength, that's not power, that's survival. But what if the most powerful thing you can do isn't to speak, but to stay completely still? What if the silence you've been taught to fear is actually the sharpest weapon you have? Let's talk about that. Explaining yourself feels good. It feels like control, like you're doing something. Like you're fixing the misunderstanding before it spreads too far. You sit down, you type out the perfect response, your heart pounding as you hit send. You think, now they'll see, now they'll understand, now the truth will speak for itself. But the truth doesn't speak in explanations, not in power games, because when you explain, you're not speaking to clarify. You're speaking to convince, and convincing always puts you below the one you're trying to reach. It says, please see me differently. It says, please believe I'm good. And no matter how calm your words are, that plea reeks of desperation. Think about the last time someone tried to explain themselves to you. Did you admire them more for it? Or did it feel like they were trying too hard? See, the brain isn't wired to reward over justification. When someone rushes to defend, our instincts don't say, that's noble. They whisper, why are they so eager? What are they hiding? It's not fair, but it's real, and reality always beats fairness. Let me tell you about Olivia. She built a huge following online, smart, powerful, respected, until one day, someone accused her of vague words, serious tone. It went viral in hours. And Olivia, she did what felt right. She wrote a long thread, explained every step, showed screenshots, broke it all down. But she lost, not because she was guilty, but because the crowd didn't care about evidence, they cared about posture. And in her attempt to be clear, she exposed herself as emotionally invested, reactive, defensive, and once they saw that, they didn't see truth. They saw weakness. This is the trap. The more you try to look innocent, the guiltier you seem. Because you've already accepted the wrong frame, the frame where you owe them an answer, and the moment you operate inside that frame, you've handed over the leash. They're not listening to what you say. They're watching why you feel the need to say it, because power doesn't explain, power doesn't rush. Power doesn't clarify, it creates silence and lets others squirm in it. When you speak just to be understood, you've already lost your position. Not because your truth isn't real, but because you've placed it in their hands, and if they can accept it, they can also reject it. But if you never offer it, they're left guessing. That's not evasion, that's control. So let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone stay calm while being falsely accused, and you started to wonder, what do they know that we don't? That pause, that stillness, that refusal to engage, that's not silence, that's dominance. And the moment you learn to live in it, to sit inside it without flinching, is the moment you stop being someone who explains and start becoming someone who's untouchable. There's a different kind of power that most people never learn. It's quiet. It's slow, it doesn't rush, it doesn't need to, because it knows something others don't, that the silence between words speaks louder than the words themselves. It's the kind of power that doesn't announce itself, it just is. And when it walks into a room, the room adjusts. We call it controlled silence, not the silence of someone frozen. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of someone who's already decided not to waste their energy proving what they already know. Think about it. When someone speaks too quickly, don't they seem nervous? When someone fills every space with words, don't they seem like they're trying to convince themselves? But the one who pauses, the one who waits, The one who speaks last and least, that's the one everyone listens to. It's not about saying nothing forever. It's about choosing when to speak, and knowing that every moment of silence before you do makes your words weigh more. Barack Obama mastered this. Watch his debates. He doesn't jump. He lets the other person speak. He lets the audience sit in the tension. Then, with perfect calm, he speaks slowly, deliberately, like each word costs a fortune, and people lean in. They listen harder, not because he speaks louder, but because his pauses make people crave what's coming next. That's not charisma, that's strategy. Controlled silence shifts attention. It creates psychological discomfort, but not for you, for them. Because people expect noise, they expect a fight. When they don't get it, they start to panic. They start to fill the space you left, and the more they fill, the more they reveal. And you stay still. That stillness becomes your armor. Your posture, your power, because when you say nothing, they start wondering everything. Did you not hear them? Did you not care? Are you planning something? The mystery becomes the message. They call it cold, distant, arrogant. But what they really mean is, it unsettles them, because silence isn't empty, it's loaded with presence, with restraint, with choice. And the man who can sit still, who can let accusations float untouched, who can wait in complete control, that man terrifies people without lifting a finger. It's not just about self-control, it's about social leverage. Because in the end, no one respects the man who talks back to every whisper, but they always remember the one who listened and didn't flinch. So the next time you're cornered, don't fight, don't speak, don't react. Let silence do the work. Let it stretch, let it make them wonder, because the man who pauses before speaking, he's already won. There's a shift that happens when you stop reacting, not just in your mind, in the entire dynamic. The person attacking you expects movement. Emotion, defense, something they can grab onto. When they get stillness instead, they don't see calm, they see a mirror, and that mirror forces them to face something they didn't expect, themselves. Because when you don't respond, their words don't bounce off you, they echo back at them. And suddenly, they're left holding something they don't know what to do with. That's when you use the reversal tactic. You don't fight their words. You flip them. Someone calls you arrogant. You pause, smile slightly, and say, "Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." They say you're cold. You look right through them. Or maybe, "I just don't need to perform emotion for approval." They say you're fake. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. You're not denying anything. You're not defending, you're reframing, not with anger, not with sarcasm, just a calm, quiet inversion. One that turns their emotional energy back onto them, because what they gave you was never a truth. It was a frame, a story where you're the villain, and they expected you to play along, but when you don't, the story starts to collapse. They were ready for an argument, a protest, a meltdown, something dramatic they could win against, but now, they're standing alone in their own narrative, and you're watching with curiosity, not concern. That's psychological judo. You don't push. You pull, you take their force and redirect it, gently, until they fall under the weight of their own projection. Let me tell you about Tyler, high-level manager, smart, disliked by a peer who always tried to undermine him. One day, that peer said in front of the team, "You know, Tyler, you always have to be in control. Maybe try listening for once." Everyone turned, waiting. Tyler didn't blink. He looked around the table, then calmly said, "It's always the loudest voice that says that." No tone, no heat, just truth framed with precision. The room shifted. The accuser tried to laugh it off, but something broke. Because in that moment, Tyler showed everyone who really needed control, and he didn't raise his voice once. That's the reversal. You turn accusation into exposure, not of your guilt, but of their insecurity. Because most people who lash out aren't attacking you. They're announcing what they can't handle in themselves. You're just the screen. And when you don't react, when you flip the frame instead of playing in it, you take that spotlight they tried to throw on you, and you reflect it straight back at their own cracks. That's not defense, that's dominance. Most people think reputation is built by being liked. They try to be agreeable, clear, soft, transparent. They explain themselves endlessly, hoping to be seen as a good. But here's the truth. Good reputations are forgettable. They don't make people hesitate. They don't shift the temperature in a room. What does aura? Aura isn't about image. It's about presence. That unspoken gravity someone carries. The kind that makes people whisper before they speak your name. Not because they hate you, not because they love you, but because they don't know what you're capable of. Aura is mystery with weight, and it's built not by what you say, but by what you refuse to say. You don't chase narratives. You don't correct rumors. You don't clap back at every insult. You stand, you watch, you stay absolutely still. And in that stillness, something wild happens. People start making up stories, not out of malice, out of curiosity. Because the mind hates blanks, it fills them. And when you give no signal, no expression, no clarification, they invent one, and usually it's bigger, darker, and more powerful than anything you could have said. That's not manipulation. That's restraint. Let me show you what I mean. Alina was a quiet giant in the investment world. Built billion-dollar deals, but she never responded to press, never posted, never defended herself when the media attacked. Journalists speculated. Competitors whispered, but Alina, she just kept moving. What happened? Her silence became a myth. People started saying she must be dangerous. That she knew things others didn't. That anyone who crossed her disappeared. None of it was true. But she didn't deny it. She didn't even acknowledge it. And the myth kept growing. She didn't build her aura. The world did. She just allowed it. And that's the secret. Aura isn't something you force. It's something you don't interrupt. The mistake most people make is thinking they need to control what others think. They don't. They just need to stop over-explaining, stop reacting, stop making themselves accessible to every emotional grab. Because the moment you become predictable, you become manageable, and no one fears what they can manage. But when your silence stretches beyond their reach, when your calm refuses to bend, you stop being just a person, you become a presence. Something they feel before you speak. That's aura, not the loudest, not the nicest, not the most liked, but the most unreadable. And in a world obsessed with being understood, the unreadable man is the one who holds all the power. Because he could say something, but chooses not to, and that choice makes everyone else lean in closer, wonder harder, respect more, not because they know you, but because they don't. Power isn't just about what's said. It's about who defines the conversation, because every interaction is built on a frame, an invisible structure of assumptions and emotional tone, and the one who controls that frame controls the outcome. Most people don't realize this. They respond to what was said, not why it was said, or how it was positioned. They walk straight into a trap and don't even know they've stepped inside. Let me show you how this works. Chris was a young tech founder. Brilliant, sharp, but constantly underestimated. At a major board meeting, one of the investors leaned in and said, "This strategy of yours feels rushed. Have you actually thought it through?" Everyone turned. It was a challenge. A framing attempt. Chris was expected to explain himself, maybe backpedal, maybe soften his tone. He didn't. He leaned back, met the man's eyes, and said calmly, "Would you like to present your alternative now?" A silence. Power shifted. Not because Chris defended himself, but because he rejected the frame. The investor wanted the room to see Chris as impulsive. Chris made the investor look unprepared. That's frame kill. You don't argue inside their setup. You destroy the setup itself, because the second you explain yourself inside their terms, you've accepted their authority, you've agreed without saying it, that they get to define the battlefield. And when you do that, even if you will win, you've already lost. The key isn't to respond harder. It's to reframe higher. They say, "You're being too intense." You say, "Maybe this matters more to me than it does to you." They say, "Why are you so cold?" You say, "I just don't show things for attention." Short, unbothered, untouched by their emotional bait. That's what breaks people, because they thought they had you cornered. Instead, they're standing alone in their own projection, trying to prove something you never accepted in the first place. You're not debating anymore, you're redefining the space. And here's the deeper part most people never see. Control doesn't come from being louder, faster, or smarter. It comes from choosing what game to play and refusing to play anyone else's. That's why people with real presence don't react quickly. They slow down, they pause, they speak only when it resets the tone. Every word becomes a steering wheel. Every sentence, a shift in gravity, because once you understand frame, you don't need to argue, you just tilt the floor beneath their feet. And they don't even realize they're falling. Let them talk. That's the move most people are too afraid to make. Not because they don't know it works, but because silence feels like surrender, like giving the other side the upper hand. But what if letting them speak is exactly how you take it back? Here's what people forget. The more someone talks, the more they reveal, not just about the situation, about themselves, their fears, their envy, their cracks. The attack always says more about the attacker than the accused, but most people interrupt the process. They step in too early, try to correct, clarify, fight back, and in doing so, they stop the attacker from exposing themselves fully. The real move, let them finish, then let them keep going, because no one can perform balance for long. Eventually, their voice gets sharper, their words more dramatic, the emotion starts leaking out. And the audience, the room, the group chat, the digital crowd, begins to shift. Not because of anything you said, but because of how still you stayed. That's exactly what happened to Emma. She was calm, private, kept her circle small. One day, someone she once trusted, an ex-friend, went public, accused her of manipulation, posted vague stories, dropped hints and half-truths for attention, and Emma, she didn't respond, not once. 10 days passed. And in those 10 days, the other girl posted 6 times, each one louder, angrier, more desperate for support. People started to notice. They weren't reading the posts anymore, they were reading the energy. Why does she keep posting? Why does she seem so emotional? Why is Emma so quiet? And that's when it flipped. Emma didn't win by proving she was right. She won because the other person proved they were unstable, and Emma's silence let that happen. That's what happens when you let the noise run long enough. It turns in on itself. Because people who are truly in control don't talk this much. They don't beg for agreement. They don't need validation. They don't chase attention. And when you make it clear, without saying a word, that you're not playing that game, the crowd starts to listen differently. They start to see the volume for what it is, insecurity in costume. And now the attacker, who thought they were building a case, finds themselves on trial, not because of the facts, but because of the frame they walked into. You gave them the mic, and they exposed themselves. Not because you were clever, but because you were patient. That's how reputation works in silence. It's not a shield, it's a mirror. You just have to hold it long enough for the reflection to burn. So the next time someone comes for you, let them. Let them swing, let them scream, let them spin, because the storm always ends the same way. With them tired and you untouched, sometimes the strongest move is to disappear, not as an escape, not as avoidance, but as a strategy. Because presence is power, but absence is precision, and when used right, it's devastating. We live in a world addicted to response, to instant replies, to fast comebacks. Everyone wants a reaction, an explanation. Something they can screenshot and dissect. And when you give them nothing, you don't just frustrate them, you expose them. Because the silence left behind doesn't just echo, it expands. They wanted a fight, you gave them a void. Now they're swinging at shadows, telling stories to a crowd that stopped caring 2 posts ago. And every time they speak into that silence, their voice sounds more and more unstable. That's when they break. It's not that you ignored them. It's that you vanished without permission. You didn't block, you didn't engage, you didn't validate the stage they built for themselves. You just stopped showing up, and that absence becomes unbearable, because attention is their oxygen. And when you take it away, when you let them talk to the air, they start to choke on their own performance. Let me tell you about Malik. He ran a startup, quiet, focused, respected by most. One of his former partners, bitter, left behind, started publicly calling him out, accused him of stealing credit, said he was selfish, cold, calculated. Everyone waited for Malik's reply, but it never came. He didn't post, didn't comment, didn't ask others to speak for him. He simply kept building, and within weeks, the narrative shifted. The former partner started spiraling, posted longer rants, repeated himself, made emotional videos that no one asked for. And one by one, people tuned out. Why? Because without a target, every arrow looks like flailing. Malik didn't fight. He let the silence do the cutting, and the world did the rest. That's what disappearance does. It doesn't say, I'm scared. It says you're irrelevant. It doesn't say, I can't answer. It says you're not even worth the reply. Oh, but you have to mean it. True disappearance can't be fake. It's not about sulking. It's not about waiting for them to notice. It's about moving on so fully, so cleanly, that their noise dies of starvation. And when you reappear, if you ever do, you're not answering anything. You've already won, just by not playing, because silence holds power, but absence. Absence becomes legend. When you learn to vanish without explaining, without warning, without apology, you become untouchable in a new way. Not just feared, unreachable. They say reputation is everything, but most people chase the wrong kind. They want to be admired, liked, approved of. They want applause when they walk in, agreement when they speak, sympathy when they're challenged. But admiration fades, approval is fickle, and sympathy is a trap. The kind of reputation that holds real power, it's not built on being liked, it's built on being respected. Or better yet, feared, just enough to make people think twice before they cross you. That's the difference between a good reputation and a strong one. A good reputation gets you invited. A strong one gets you obeyed. A good reputation earns applause. A strong one earns silence when you speak. A good man is trusted. But a powerful man, he's unpredictable, and unpredictability, that's what makes people cautious, because people don't fear kindness. They fear what they can't read, what they can't control, what they can't see coming. And when you stop defending yourself, truly stop, something strange happens. They stop putting you on trial. They stop asking you to prove your worth, because somewhere in their mind, they realize you don't care to prove anything. And that quiet refusal, that stillness in the storm, makes them nervous, it makes them hesitate, and that hesitation is where your power lies. Not in shouting, not in speeches, not in long explanations about who you are or what you meant. Just in the way you carry yourself when the world wants you to flinch and you don't. Let me give you a moment, a dinner table, 4 people, you, a colleague, 2 others you barely know. The colleague makes a jab. Oh, here he goes again, mister. Know it all. The room freezes. They wait for you to laugh it off, to say something clever, to explain you're not actually like that. But you don't. You just sit back, calm, steady. You look at him, hold his gaze, no anger, no smirk. Just stillness. 2 seconds pass, that's all, but everything shifts. Suddenly it's him who looks uncomfortable. He chuckles, says I'm just kidding, tries to soften it, but no one's laughing anymore, because they didn't see a joke land. They saw someone swing and miss, and you didn't even move. That's how strong reputations are made. Not by defending against the jab, but by making the jab feel small. Because your silence didn't say, I don't care. It said, you're not even on my level. And that feeling, that quiet dominance, it spreads. Room to room, word to word, until your name carries something you never had to say aloud. Wait, so no, you don't need a perfect image, you need presence. And once you stop defending, once you let your restraint speak for you, people don't just remember your name. They remember the feeling you left in the room, and they don't dare test it twice. You don't need to speak to be heard. You don't need to prove to be respected, and you don't need to fight to win. The final form of power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself, the way you respond, or don't, the way you carry silence. The way your stillness unsettles those who rely on noise. That's when you cross a line, a silent, invisible one. Where you no longer defend, you define your image with presence, not posts. You define your value. Without ever asking to be seen, you define your standards, not through rules, but through your absence from places that don't meet them, and that's what changes everything. Because when people realize you're not playing for approval, when they see that your identity isn't a vote, but a decision, the energy shifts. You become the standard, the axis around which others adjust, and that's not arrogance, that's clarity. You don't need to explain anymore, because nothing about you is trying to be convincing. You're not looking for permission to exist. You're not debating your place. You're not inviting judgment into a space it no longer owns. You've walked past it. And now every time someone throws an accusation, it falls flat, not because you blocked it, but because it never touched you in the first place. You didn't rise above. You started from above. And no, that won't make you popular. It might not even make you understood, but it will make you untouchable, because true power doesn't get dragged into drama. It doesn't swing wildly in every direction. It holds the line, it holds the pause, it holds the room. And that's what breaks people, not your words, but the weight of everything you could say and choose not to. So next time someone tests you, remember this: the most feared man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one no one wants to test twice. And when your silence starts to speak for you, when your calmness starts to carry answers, that's when you've won a different kind of battle, one that doesn't need defense, only presence.